We met on Turks,
we
didn't
did,
we?
yeah.
And we did things like, we started the crits, didn't we, between studios, so we started almost like the outside of Turks type of initiative. We were a bit DIY in that respect.
We were the rebels, weren't we?
Yeah. So, yeah, and I thought that was really useful. And
yeah.
I think one of the things that was highlighted to me through Turks was that it was a brilliant programme, like you said, but very London-centric. And one of the things that I found that about Turks is that it's absolutely brilliant, but we need more. And I think it's brilliant what you're doing. Absolutely brilliant. I think it's the start of something, and the fact that everybody's turned up for this is amazing. And I think we should all self-organise, because I'm a self-organiser.
Yes.
So yeah.
And we've said that, haven't we?
Yeah.
One of the reasons I invited Nancy is because, and I called her my left field artist, which I hope I've cleared with her this morning was okay to call her, in that, we set up these separate conversations, and I think we quickly realised that maybe things that were happening were possibly, sorry, my shoes. We're going to London, and also because Marcus Harvey is centred in London and the Turks School is, it wasn't really, it was difficult for us being in the north to generate anything further from the correspondence course, so we were giving over our £1,700 a year. You did 2 years, I've done before.
Yeah, I did the short one in the second year.
Right.
Yeah, three crits. Yeah.
But it was what we could get from that, and we had those conversations early on, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly, and it is that thing of there were lots of people organising exhibitions in London who were on the Turks course, and we weren't able to, and it's really hard geographically to organise something in the north, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I think I put that on a PDF for the symposium, was like, it's not just geographical constraints, it's financial, isn't it? Because if we were to transport any works out, it would be the cost of that as well as...
Yeah, and me personally, I've given up. I don't enter anything. I don't enter any open calls because of the expense. I had some... I won a prize in the Manchester Open a couple of years ago, the last Manchester Open, and I got a little bursary, and that meant I could send my painting and myself to the big painting prize because I got in that, and that was brilliant. That's a really good profile opportunity. But
I just remembered I've not done your bio. I've not given you a bio.
It's how we do that. No, it's fine. It doesn't matter. It's fine. Do you want me to just tell you a little bit about myself?
Yeah. So
okay. So I'm
also maybe start with Marana. I mean, you don't say it like that, do you?
You can say it however you like, Jayne.
Nancy set up an amazing private gallery in Marple in Stockport.
Yeah. I'm completely self-taught really. I did other than doing the foundation when I was 19, and my mum being a painter actually that helps, doesn't it? I went to work in the creative sector. I suppose you could call me a bit entrepreneurial. It was a bit creative, used to make things happen, set the business, all those things. And then about 8 years ago, me and my family moved to Australia. I think it was about upsetting my life, to be honest, and turning everything upside down. And because I'd stopped doing what I was doing in my regular job, I just started going to life drawing, and then before you know it, you've got a studio in the garage. It all started happening from there for me. And so I'm quite late to it, but I knew it was always there, and I knew I always wanted to do it, and I always thought that one day I would go back and do a degree.
Would you say the scene in Australia is quite encouraging of female painters? Because that's what I've read from social media.
Yeah.
If anybody else has felt like that.
Yeah, I got really into the painting scene in Australia. I just found it really current, lively, very well supported. Probably not as connected because there's a lot of regional stuff going on. But and I think painting in Australia evolved just like the animals did, in a different way, because you've got a lot of influence from the Aboriginal scene, and so it's just like a really exciting scene over there, and they didn't ever question is painting relevant, not a stupid question, comes up every now and then.
I think, yeah, that is possibly why the language of painting is so important, because it's part of Australia, isn't it? The language of painting with the Aboriginal.
Yeah, and the connection with the land, and the fact that pigments come from the land, and there's just so much embedded in that, and they support it with prizes. You know, you've got the Brett Whiteley travelling scholarship. There's just so much, you know, and so well accepted and supported by the public. And that just, you know, just to come back to why I set up Miramar was is about this exclusive, inclusive thing, and I felt like not enough public know about painting, not enough public really appreciate painting like they do in Australia. They've got a huge scene of people buying paintings. They've got bigger walls, and usually got bigger houses.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a thing there. You know, people buy art, and I just felt like what's happened here is that it's become the preserve of the elite to buy art, and so I deliberately. I mean, I'm not academically trained, and I'm not in that public sector funding world. I don't know how to do that, but I do know how to be, I suppose, entrepreneurial and how to find ways of doing things that don't involve having funding, because I can't. So I've got this massive resistance, and maybe I need to address this at some point, about applying for public funding. I find it really quite, I don't know, restrictive in many ways.
I think I'm similar in that I've never received any Arts Council funding. I've applied for 2 DYCP grants and not received either, and I feel sometimes the energy that goes into that at the time is so drawing on your creative energy, and then when you get knocked back, it kind of sets you back in your practice, or can do, I think.
Well, I'm sort of not the kind of person that can plan what my practice is going to look like in 12 months' time. I've no idea.
Yes.
I want to keep that freedom, and I think the idea of setting up the gallery was about. This is ridiculous, really, when you think about it. It was about creating myself a job so that my painting practice could be separate and be funded by myself, but it's not working out like that. I created another monster.
That space. For now, I don't think it'll always be that. Has anybody been to Nancy's gallery space in Marple? Yeah, brilliant. It's a beautiful space. It's really welcoming. Nancy's incredibly welcoming.
Sorry.
The breadth of opportunities that Nancy is putting out there is just exactly the conversations we were having about including people. It takes me 2 trains to get there.
Oh my god! Oh my god! You get the reward for best effort, honestly, for distance. Yeah.
But I think it's important to make that effort to go there, and I would advise anybody to go there and support Nancy. And I think you're trying to strike a balance as well between, it's quite difficult as well who you want your audience to be, but you need to keep the business sustained. So I think it's interesting the balance you're trying to create there in that space as well.
Yeah, and it's I've been thinking about what my sort of aims were and how did I do it in the first year, because it's been a year and I've learned so much. And I think one of the things I did was I knew lots of really amazing painters, yourself included, through Turks. That became a network in a way, and I got to know people's practices in quite a lot of depth. And so we'd have been having these conversations, so with you, with Kate Jacob, with Emma Richardson, who was in Southampton but now she's moved to London, with Louise West, who's in Dublin. So we were this sort of outsider group.
Yeah. Should we just explain a little bit to people that don't know what the correspondence course entails?
Okay, yeah, does anybody want to know? But remember to come back to the network. You just pay up a lot of money. I started getting the Turks magazine, I think I was in Australia, I think I was in Birley. And I really rate it. I absolutely rate the course. So I started reading the magazine a few years ago, and seeing in the back there's this advert for the art, the correspondence course, and I was like, oh my god, I would love to do that. I would absolutely love to do that. When I'm at this stage, so I waited a few years, and then I applied and I got on, and what happens is that you get 5 reviews, don't you? You get assigned a particular mentor, and you get 5 reviews. You work, you write about your work, and then you send off your review with some images of your work. And
so it's like a correspondence crit.
Yeah, and I can't even put my finger on how it works or why it works or anything like that, but it does, and it just moves your practice on. And
it's a bit like therapy, I think.
Yeah.
They drop a stone and leave the ripples, really.
Yeah, and it sinks in, doesn't it? And some of the things you think you should be concerned about, like this, that, and the other, sometimes they could just completely ignore some of the things you're saying, and just in the fact that they've ignored it, is actually
significant.
Yeah, it's actually really important, and so the things they encourage you to focus on is what becomes the focus, I suppose. And so I would absolutely recommend I'd recommend it to everybody. And just to go back to that point about the network, so because I knew those artists really well, I knew their practice, I've been to visit them in the studios over a period of a couple of years, I invited them in to do the first series of shows at Miramar, and because that was my network, and and I knew there's something about that, and I don't know whether it's just the Terps course, but through that process I could just see that they were sort of ready in a way. Those artists were ready to have a solo exhibition. And it's something I've learned since, in the last year, how to spot it, and it's quite interesting. I can't even define it. There's just a series of different things that create that readiness, I think, in terms of how your work's developed and what have you.
Should we talk about your paintings a little bit?
Yeah, sorry, we're
all
over.
It's okay, it's good. So, Nancy has brought in some of these lovely, beautiful collages on boards here, and also there's a big canvas on the painting down there. I always remember you talking about Deepen Corn.
Oh yeah. So that was my last sort of series of work actually, but I suppose it still comes in with this one.
So we had a conversation, didn't we, in the back there? We had a little crit. And Nancy was saying, I feel like my body of work is at a junction, I'm changing all. You didn't use the word junction, but you were saying I'm just
mid-flow, mid-process.
I'm just about to start a new body of work, and I said, I just see it as linear. I don't see that at all, because especially when we reference Deepen Corn and we think maybe of the landscape.
Yeah. I think I kind of work in projects.
Right.
So each year I seem to have a focus. But
do you want to tell us about the painting at the end then, or tell us about?
Yeah, well this is from last year. This is from so I was working sort of from the land, but then I moved to the sea because I'm a bit obsessed about the sea, the way it moves, and movement has always been an interest of mine in my practice ever since reading a book, I can't remember what it's called now, years ago, about how the way you move is actually really important in your painting process, so the movements that you make are unique to you. And so that has always been like part of my practice, I think, and I think with drawing from the sea, I feel like that is something important that I can connect with, and so I'm midway through this sort of, it's almost like a bit of research really into how to paint the sea, I suppose, in a way, but then also using, as you get halfway, as you start painting, you start to understand why you're doing it and what it is about, and I think I'm halfway through this point of understanding why I'm doing this, and obviously, and I keep getting drawn to reading certain books about the sea and where the sea is like the main character in it and things like that.
And you've been on a residency, haven't you, recently?
Oh, we only went away. Call it a residency. Yeah, but when you've not got the kids and the family and all of that, when you can just go and work, that's really, quite valuable.
Things
Yeah. So I'm doing. So I'm going back. I'm taking over the gallery actually over the next couple of weeks to do some work with ink and large paper. And it's about that idea of, drawing from the sea. But I think the sea as a metaphor is loaded, isn't it? With
and
all
we've
sorts
talked
of
about
stuff.
doing that here, and that is definitely something else I'd like to think about
Yeah.
here in this space when we're not using all of the spaces, is collaborative working, or days of working collaboratively with other artists. Because we talked about that a little bit when I came over.
Yeah, I think residencies are really, really good, and to wait for something that's funded and all of that is actually, again, it goes against me. It can, and if you feel like you could just try and make it happen. I mean, I swapped my accommodation for a painting,
I'm going to click on so that we can... Do you want to talk about the colour? Because your colour is quite... I think you have a signature palette.
Yeah, I don't quite... Right, so this colour and also my collage, right, these are the two things that I don't understand in a way, and I think it's good not to understand, it's good not to know. But people seem to really respond to my collage. I found it like my really private practice where I just play, it's just my playground, I suppose. I'm really interested as well how we can make painting more sustainable and reuse materials and not just contribute to more stuff in the world. So I'm really conscious about the use of materials, and that that I probably only want to do one series on canvas per year for and then how to kind of bring out that reuse of materials a lot more. So that's an experimental sort of thing.
I mean, they do. You've mentioned Aboriginal painting. I've not mentioned that, but you can definitely see it from these, and also when we make reference to deep and corn and those kind of aerial perspective images of the landscape, and you can definitely sense that, I think, in this painting, whether that's a conscious effort or that's just coming through these earthy tones and the kind of...
I think one of the key points for me actually recently in the last, 12 months is ditching the gesso, using a raw canvas and letting the paint soak in, and just thinking about the more natural. And I do want to kind of go further with that and look at pigments in their raw state. And I think materiality is really important, and I think that's why the colour palette changes, I suppose, according to what you.
We're going to move on to these drawings, ink drawings, are they?
Yeah. I mean, this is this idea of drawing with ink, and I think that's something I want to explore. That is definitely something I'm going to explore in the next couple of weeks, actually.
I think that's perfect for, and we've got people here I know that work with these, earth-giving pigments, natural pigments, inks that we can obtain and harvest ourselves. I think is a way of working going forward, isn't it? And also I think what's interesting about ink in relation to oil paint, it's the flow, isn't it? And it's the thin, the fact that you can alter the thickness of it. Well, you have less control over it, don't you? And that's quite refreshing when you have to kind of layer those thick, even though you can use a glaze in oil paint and thin your paint down, it's not as it's not kind of doing its own thing like ink would do, or watercolour, is it?
Yeah, so really the ink drawings are a way into the painting. So I draw, the movement of the ocean, and then that's my way into the painting. But then it starts to become a bit more figurative, and it feels like, because there's a lot of labour involved in scrubbing and soaking, and then I start to compare it to doing the laundry. So I feel like, so then it starts to become something about the female condition, I think, that whole idea of like our labour.
Physical
movements, so the canvas becomes...
I'm just going to move on to this last slide. Tell us about these paintings. I might have put them in upside down.
No, that's the right way up. That one's been cropped. That one, this one. The small square ones.
Yeah.
Rocks, yeah, they're both. So they are about the sea, but then they're not then in the way, because once you open up the painting with the drawing, and again they're using as initially on the canvas, and then I deliberately turn them portrait, so then they become not a bit to figurative, don't you? As soon as you move to portrait, and so.
Do you work, if you're working in an abstract way, do you turn the canvas around to think maybe it's working in a different way?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I do that a lot actually. I do turn things around as I'm working on them. But this one is quite very much about the sea actually. It is about that moment at which the wave turns over. But also that feeling of, so really I suppose what I'm trying to get a sense of is that feeling of being the sea, being in the sea, and not necessarily just standing looking at it, but just being part of it, because I feel like being a woman is like being the sea, you know. I just feel like there's quite a lot in common in terms of like our cycles, you know, I think as a metaphor it's quite a good metaphor to describe female condition in a way, totally misunderstood, you know, things.
Well, I just, and it's something that's been on social media recently, Paula Rego quote about we paint the secrets that we have, and I think that maybe those things that we're painting are what we're going through, or they're an abstraction, aren't they, of what we think that they are. I can remember Joe Packer always saying to me, because he was my guest mentor, he said, my paintings aren't about the landscape or the garden, you just need to hang the painting on something, and I thought that's just amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely that. Yeah, it's
like,
not about the sea really, it's
it's about you.
Yeah.
It's self-portraiture, isn't it, through whatever vehicle.
Yeah, and I'm reluctant to call it abstract expressionism, because it's not that, it's not just splashing paint around. You're actually thinking and you're actually putting stuff into it as you're working.
Intention, or maybe intentions there that you don't know need to come out, but are coming out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's a way of saying things that you don't have words for. And it's funny because I say that I did my foundation when I was, 19, and I went to work in a different kind of job and what have you. I was still working with design and what have you, but it was to somebody else's brief. And so when you actually turn that point where you go, actually, I've got a lot to say now, and I've got a lot to say, and sometimes there's just too many words in the world, aren't there? And so visually, I think, we've got an awful lot to say as well, and it can communicate so much more. And I think particularly as females, I think it's time that we...
How do you feel when you're painting, if you don't mind me asking that personal question?
Different things. Sometimes I can be really studious, sometimes I can be really frustrated, sometimes I can put music on, sometimes I listen to podcasts, or just complete silence, and it just varies. You just bring your own spirit to the studio and to the canvas, don't you? And whatever's happening, and this is one of the problems, but it's also one of the advantages in a way, is that one day you can come to the studio full bright and cheery, and then the next day you can look at the same painting and be like, oh, this is terrible, and really come at it with a different mindset, a different mood, and so all of those things go into it, and I don't think you can't be anything else really. So I think it's a way of communicating how we are, maybe. Sure.
Is that a nice
way to stop?
I'm going to read your bio. I'm sorry, I didn't read that to begin with. Maybe I can't. And then we can go to questions. I meant to put my reading glasses on there. Can I just say also that my artists, I'm going to call you my artist now,
forever,
have been absolutely amazing with communication. What a joy to work with. everybody. I think that that's something that I really wanted to say thank you for, that you've all got back to me so fast and asked any questions, and it's been brilliant to... Thank you. Oh, is it on there? Oh, spoiling it. No, they're too strong. Nan Collantine was born in Manchester in 1970 and completed her foundation in art in 1990, followed by 25 years working in the creative sector. Her art practice began as she and her family moved to Australia in 2016, and on her return she joined the Islington Mill Free Art School, which was an experimental peer-led programme and a year of introductory printmaking at Hotbed Press in Salford. In 2009, Nan was accepted into the Turks Banana Painting School and completed 2 years on the correspondence mentoring course. Nan works with assemblage and installation, although considers painting her primary medium. She is drawn to responding to place using the language of community to explore memory and hidden social and cultural politics that might shape perception, sentiment and feelings of belonging and exclusion. And then we have awards. A recent award recipient of the Oppenheimer, John Downes Memorial Trust Grant recipient of the Castlefield Gallery Artist Professional Development Award at the Manchester Open, the Steve Anniversary. I'm not going to list all of those group exhibitions, but there's many, isn't there, Nancy?
Most of them self-organised, to be honest. Very
ongoing projects, because I know that you're involved with spaces in Manchester Centre, and some artists are here today that have been involved with
Yeah.
What's that called?
So it's the, well, before I started the gallery, in fact, when it was after doing the Islington Mill, I should mention this actually, because this changed my life as well. So when I got back from Australia and floundering as to like how do you start practice here in the UK, struggling with this whole idea that everybody I know thinks of me as one type of person, you know, like not an artist, so that was a real struggle to get my head around. But Islington Mill Art Academy was something set up by Maury and Bill, and it was just like, we just started turning up to something which was on a Wednesday night every other week, and then he said, oh, would you like to do a year-long programme? We'll give you the art space. There's this gallery downstairs in the mill. And there was about 12 of us, and we all came together and could do whatever we wanted. So we just made up our own curriculum. Some people were more involved than others, some people were really organised, some people, you know, so there was residencies, so we did have like a studio residency in different places around the mill. And it was amazing really, and it actually gave me that confidence to be able to say, yeah, I'm an artist, and to also not wait for permission and to actually make things happen yourself, and that determination you need in order to make things happen. And a lot of the time things are just a bit less than brilliant, aren't they? You know, things like, I don't know, and you go through, I think all of us must have possibly been through this thing of like, you know, you enter open calls and things like that, a little bit, and so,
There might be that.
yeah, not all of them. Some of them are great, but you just think, oh, this is not the way I want my work to be seen and presented, and it just doesn't feel like it's curated. And so, yeah, from that I decided to just self-organise and get together with people I knew to do this. In exhibitions at Victoria Baths, just go and ask anywhere, and people will always say yes because they get an extra audience. So, you know. And you can do it on the cheap, you know, you have to do it on the cheap, that's the problem. You usually have to have another job, don't you, to work in this game. And so, yeah, and that's that, and from that, Des Res, which was like a label, yeah, so I sort of set that up as a way to do a mobile, like, pop-up type exhibition thing with different people. And then from that, I was thinking for a while, well, let's have that space, it would be great. There's lots of difficult things around it. You know, it's really, I have to say, it's really, really difficult. You have to be prepared to take on a lot of work, and your practice takes back seat for a while. But I think it's part of my practice now. I think, you know, working with artists is fantastic. It's a collaborative effort. It's really amazing. I've had such fun although there's been highs and lows, it's been, on the whole, it's been brilliant working with artists and showcasing them. I mean, it's just, this is what we all need, isn't it? We all need somewhere to show work in a meaningful way with somebody that's going to support you, and so that you don't have to speak for yourself, so that a gallery can speak for you. And this is what we just don't have in the north, really, enough of. You know, there's a few examples, but yeah, you go to London and there's a gallery on every street corner, and every time I go there to go and look at some contemporary painting, I come away thinking this is just not fair. You know, so,
Nancy, I think that the exhibition that we co-curated at Birley actually did that, because it was all about an artist. You know.
Yes. Yeah. So I worked with Jayne. I mean, this was a situation whereby we applied for some funding, didn't we, to put this show on, because we wanted it to be about art that was not necessarily commercial, but we didn't get it, did we? So we had to reconfigure it. Yeah. And so we made it all about the artist's house, didn't we? And it was a way as well to not only show a lot of artists' work, but also to say thank you to all those artists that have been turning up and supporting what we've been doing.
It created a nice network of artists as well.
Yeah, and getting to know new artists and things as well.
It's Jane Fairhurst, is it?
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah.
So shall we open it up then to questions? Thank you, Nancy. Let's relax a little bit.
Oh God. I'm just worried about what went on tape.
Does anybody want to ask Nancy anything?
I'm kind of intrigued to ask, like, what's your kind of opinion on the idea of selling your work commercially? You know, like do you have like an opinion at all on, like, some people say it should be one or the other, you know, like you shouldn't really try and sell your work as a commercial thing. You should kind of strive to have more shows and kind of, because if you sell all your work then you won't have anything to show. But then, you know, some people make a bit more of a living while selling their work so they can make more work. I find it very confusing myself, so I just wondered what your view on.
Well, personally, me as a painter myself, I decided to take all that pressure off my work and decided that I want to build a career rather than sell paintings. So it's that idea of like, right, so the idea was to set up the gallery to earn a living, but it's not working out like that way. But, you know, that idea of, having another form of income is usually, I think that's something that's a fact of life in a way. But if you want to be a commercial artist, then how much are you prepared to supply work for the market?
Yeah.
And who, you know, I think I'm trying to strike a balance with Miramar actually. I want artists to take risks, and actually I didn't finish that point about the network. So last year I was going to the people I knew, who I knew their work was, you know, ready, and I knew they were ready as artists to give them a solo show. But I decided at the end of that year I can't keep doing that. I have to do something more, because I thought that putting on those sorts of exhibitions would open up the doors for more artists in the north to take risks. Actually, because I'm willing to take a risk, therefore it would be great to see more artists not being so commercially restricted, and so that's the purpose of Miramar really. And I had to bring my audience along that journey so that we're not just selling stuff that people like. And it's stuff that
Can I add something to that also?
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's people much more knowledgeable about this than me in the audience. I think it was a Left Coast session that was put on in Blackpool. Has everybody heard of Left Coast? They're an arts council organisation that are funded to put on programmes in Blackpool. And they put on some sessions to educate creatives really, and it's where I learnt about the term domestic commercial. I can't remember who did it. I think it was the person that ran Primary. I'm asking Claire, because Claire is my Blackpool go-to. But so it's about, I don't think we learn these things in art school necessarily about what the domestic commercial is, but it's where you kind of just making paintings to sell that aren't necessarily, they don't necessarily have a critical framework, or what I mean by that is that they're informed and they're part of your practice. So you can make work that is purely to sell, and that changes the market of who you're wanting to present your work to. And I know lots of students, particularly fine art students, HE students, find themselves in that difficult position, and they're generally not. We've got lecturers here who will tell us that whether they inform their students of things like this, but you don't get guidance on what to do. I think, personally, that once you enter into that domestic commercial arena, it's very difficult then to be taken seriously, critically, and to exhibit your work with bigger organisations. But that doesn't pay the bills, and if you've got a skill, you are in a difficult position where you might want to make things that are for a different market. I think it's very difficult to go between markets. You've got to kind of choose your pathway and possibly say, does anybody want to contradict me on that?
Can I ask Nan a question about
Of course, yeah.
How is that in Australia? You know, like you said earlier, how people buy art in Australia.
Yeah.
I just wonder, do they make that separation between like a commercial, domestic buy and art that's really got, got some critical kind of pizzazz to
Yeah,
it?
it's similar to here. Yeah, it's
Is it
exactly the
similar
same
to
here.
here?
Yeah. There are people that are producing work that gets sold on, online platforms or as an interior design, decor type product, like a decorative product. But then you also get a lot of, artists that are critically engaged and, doing some great work.
Do the two work together or not so much?
I agree with you actually, Jane. I don't think you can do both. I think you have to be.
Do you think that the market kind of follows up on the critical thing there? So people get a kind of exposure, and then the market
Respond.
follows them.
Yeah. Well, that's my job.
And people
really.
make money from that. So.
Yeah, I do feel like that's where I want to go with Miramar, is that if I say it's good, not if I say it's good, but if there's the framework around it and it's given that credibility of going through the gallery, and the gallery is engaged in those conversations, then I think people do catch up. And now I'm finding actually, when I look at the first year of doing this, the solo exhibitions are the ones that are most successful commercially. That's because you can see the full, picture of the artist's practice, and you can hear from the artist and talk. There are lots of sort of things that there's a sort of, I don't know how to say it.
I think it's a difficult balance between, you don't want to condescend the audience, the public. You want to inform them and educate them, and I think that you do that by making spaces like this accessible to everybody, and also in places where the public wouldn't necessarily go into. So, putting on free events and opening up exhibitions, having a wider invitation list. I think that you're doing that. I think people who don't get art are a bit frightened of it, and I think there are people out there trying to change that and make it more accessible. Like what's the art podcast? Talk Art is an example of that, isn't it? Where you've got a gallery curator from Carl Freeman Galleries, and what's the actor called? Sorry,
Russell Tovey.
Russell Tovey, who is trying to, I mean, it's not in a situation like this, is it? That's open to everybody. So I think things like that make critical art more accessible. It still doesn't solve the problem of needing to make a living and being an artist, though, does it?
I'm kind of interested in these questions because I kind of run a project space in my studio, which I do exhibitions in, and I'm always finding I'm asking myself various questions about how can this be more accessible, but how can I retain a kind of like core?
I think it's going who you go out to. Can I introduce you to everybody?
Yeah.
So
Luke
it's
Skiffington.
Luke Skiffington is an artist from Liverpool, painter. I think that's what it is. I think also you can go out to universities and invite the students in who will then get an invitation.
Yeah.
And you find that also people like to talk, they like to get together, they like to have a glass of wine, and they like to feel as if they can, that their work is accessible to them. So, having been to America a long time ago, their social scene is completely different than our social scene. We're sometimes we're quite awkward at being sociable, I think, and that's just, I don't mean to stereotype how we are, I don't know why that is, but in places like maybe it's the weather. When you go to other countries, I think that the cultural differences make gatherings, and maybe I'm completely wrong because look at this today, it's a beautiful situation where you've all joined us, and maybe that's all it is. Maybe it just takes, Luke, you to set the net wider and invite people together more to your space, or find spaces that are empty, like we did in Blackpool, Garth Greatrix did with the shops, approach the council, which I know is a minefield. But it's just persevering, isn't it, with that. Not trying to educate people because that sounds patronising, but trying to open it up to them to say, would you like to get together? I suppose if it's done like that. Liverpool's an amazing city as well for everything else, like readings, poetry, music. So I think Liverpool is an amazing cultural city, but we can do that in other cities.
Yeah, and people who actually respond to that, respond to your passion and enthusiasm, and start buying work. I mean, I'm gobsmacked actually, to be honest, it works. But it does, you know. I think I would love more people to do it. I think it'd be brilliant. Matilda, I think you.
Well, I'm so inspired by you generally and everything you say. We need more flag bearers, you know, doing this, because actually the thing this brings to me is the community. It's like when you have the network, you can do it. You know, you can come to the people in this room and go, I've got this idea, and the energy builds and it opens the doors to that closed shop at the top with all these wonderful galleries and all these traditional, like keeping it separate and about money. This is about passion and love, and it's great and it's so inspiring. And I've set up a small gallery as well, kind of. And exactly with this idea of wanting to bring something good to people who don't know what good is yet, like try and share something that is really good, not commercial, something that's really thoughtful and deep and brilliant, and share it with people who don't know what it is and try and explain it in a way that's not too confusing and kind of isolating and elitist, and just, you know, art's for everybody, but it still needs to be really good.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people see it. If you start showing them the work, they start to understand the difference between what is decorative and what has got something more to it. And painting is really accessible.
How do you define that though, Nan? You know, how do you define the difference between a gallery where you see a readiness in somebody to have a silver show, you bring them in, this is thoughtful, completely critically engaged work. It's hung on gallery walls and you want to just say, look how brilliant this person is, come and understand their work. And then there are smaller galleries who just have a lot of interior design pieces on the walls and they're knocking them out and just sort of a set price of, you know, what will the punters pay, 400 quid a pop, I'll take half, you take half. How do you define the difference between those two things? You're telling me, I assume you take a commission.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have to find ways
to make it viable.
Yeah, I do have to do that, and but I don't charge. I mean, I'm trying to do it in a traditional model, I suppose. How do I do it? I think just by example, just showing people, because you do get some people coming going, oh, you know, you could get about 20 more pieces of work on these walls, you know, and you're like, well, that's not the sort of gallery I am, and people start to understand it. So I think if you just, like you said, Jane, build it and they will come, you know.
Don't you think, Nancy, that's what happens, that you show a certain type of work that has a, you know, a quality to it, and people recognise that, and as time goes by, so somewhere like Saul Hay Gallery is developed like, but it's taken quite a
I think that's the kind of contrast with London, isn't it, where you've got an array of different galleries and curators, gallery owners, catering for different tastes. So Nancy is basically saying that she's a tastemaker or a curator.
Exactly. Yeah.
But not everybody will be into your taste,
No.
and that's absolutely fine.
No.
So
It
what
is,
we need are more galleries with different ideas and models, I think, presenting work.
Definitely, yeah, I would welcome more galleries, absolutely. Because I think that if you show work, then people see it. That's all it is, and I think yeah, that's all it is. I don't think it's any more difficult than that, really.
I ask this question because I'm conflicted with people who do what you do, which I completely respect, and if I had a gallery, it's what I would do too. And then I find I get arguments from people who put commercial work on the walls and argue that they are gallerists.
Well, it's what your intentions are, isn't it? And that's fine for that. You need to set out what it is or who it is that you want to draw to your business or gallery.
Yeah.
It's not good to be too closed, is it? So that's
No.
one of the... So you could invite in guest curators or guests so that you're not becoming too... Because I think that is a domestic commercial...
I think maybe the difference is, if you're trying to monetise something, or your intent is not to monetise something. Maybe your intent is just to show it. And
Yeah, I do have to make money. I do have to make money. We all live in this system, don't we, where you have to make money, so
It's
it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. You have to, be willing to
We're going
have another job to pay for it. We're going over time.
We're going to have to tie up there. Sorry, question from Alex at the back.
Yeah, sorry. Do you think the distinction's a myth between commercial and critically acclaimed? Because you go to big galleries like Worth, it's all critically acclaimed work. The only difference seems to be more money. That's the reality, I think.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be a distinction, or much of a
Do you want to
distinction.
So, who are you thinking about?
Well, just House of Worth or
well, say for
White
example,
Cube,
Mark
it's all
Bradford.
there.
Did you see Mark Bradford a couple of years ago
Yeah.
at House and Work? He's a big, successful, in a commercial space now. But his work is incredible, and
Oh, it's incredible,
it's
critically
complete,
acclaimed.
it's original. It comes from him. I think it's about it being not derivative, but also about it being really authentic, which is a really hard thing to, and built, and there's a narrative to it, and the artist is serious about the work and not just churning work out.
I do understand that, yeah, but I'm just saying that it just seems to be critically acclaimed, you just get more money. There seems to be not that much distinction.
I don't know the answer to that.
No, you see what I mean? If an artist makes a cheap work and sells it in a cheap gallery, and an artist makes more critically acclaimed work, more intense work,
I would like to say that I could
then
see
he
the
sells
difference.
it, I
Yeah.
think they try to maintain the myth, but I think to a certain extent it's a bit of a myth
Yeah.
in some ways.
Katie, did you want to
Yeah, like for example, there's like an artist, Doug Fishburne, who predominantly does like these lectures that are quite funny, but they're political as well. And he says that he does teaching in order to like sustain his practice because he wants to make work. Like he's not bothered about the films selling or whatever. So I don't know. I guess that is one example. Maybe.
Yeah, I do understand that, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day they are still commodified
Yeah.
and sold as such, no
But isn't
matter
it
what
about-
the artist puts into it.
Isn't it about intention? So whether you're setting
Possibly.
out to sell work or whether you're setting out
Yeah.
to follow what you really want to do, that doesn't mean it can't be for sale, it can't be commercial.
No, but at the end of the day, it seems to still come down to money.
I think for me personally, it's about, am I still learning? Am I still making mistakes? Or am I producing something that's really slick and will guarantee to get sold? Like, most of my work doesn't sell. I just feel like it's, it's about experimenting, pushing my practice into areas that, so it's like a lifelong learning thing for me, you know, and so I decided to take that commercial, you know, pressure off my work, you know, and so.
I suppose Damien Hirst would be a perfect example of that, but that's a massive subject. So on that note, we're going to take a break. Thank you, Nancy.